Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am humbled to stand before you to share the tragedies and joy of human life, the trauma, the pain, the loss of the most valuable thing, which is the loss of culture, the loss of heritage. So today, I am presenting my topic, which is on, well, it's just thought leadership. So please don't be worried about lack of actual substantive research evidence to this, but it will all translate and synthesize. Within the 15 minutes, I would like to talk about the UK-Africa Forum on Cultural Diplomacy. Of course, we are talking about promoting and preserving the UK-Africa's intangible cultural heritage. And this is a call to global action. Ladies and gentlemen, without much ado or much ado, distinguished guests and esteemed colleagues, thank you for joining me today, honestly. I stand before you not just as a speaker, but as a passionate advocate for a cause that touches the very soul of our shared humanity. Today, the preservation of cultural heritage, and I thank the CCDS for granting me this opportunity to make this leadership call. The UK-Africa heritage is not just a relic of the past. If I may reorient you back to the reality, this is actually characterized by the rich tapestry of living traditions. Our folklore, music, dance, and spiritual rituals that were never probably recorded or recognized. This is not just history, it is the heartbeat of our communities. It is a vital expression of our identity, wisdom, and resilience. But here is the challenge. If I may take you to the next slide. So, these valuable traditions are underrepresented. They are underfunded, and they are at a very precipitous moment, almost heading to consequential deletion, almost heading towards extinction. But let me call you to the voice of reason. Without concerted global action, the UK and Africa risk losing them forever and will never recover. I will cite, for example, when the coordinator, the chair, was presenting the Lord Howe. And I liked one aspect of that cultural aspect, which is the number of governments he had served, his knowledge, his oral citations, how they reverberate, how they enhance our knowledge systems today. If, obviously, let me not say this, if he was not here anymore, are we ever going to know where Zimbabwe is? Are we ever going to know where Mauritius is if we would not take an advantage of his presence, recording such kind of examples, recording each and every step of his journey that he moved within government and diplomatic intercessions and engagement? So it's a call to a concerted global action. Imagine a world where the vibrant rhythms of African drums are silenced, where the stories of our ancestors fade into oblivion, which is already the reality and it has already happened. This is not just a loss of mainly for Africa itself. It is a loss for the entire world. And what are we losing? Definitely at the present moment, it's something quite significant. It is something quite important that needs as part of this platform, a raft of diplomatic measures, which we are talking about, i.e. cultural diplomacy, but then what is cultural diplomacy and what is the whole point of this leadership thought? We need to think about digital preservation. We need to think about sustainable development as the one to win and gain. How cultural preservation itself is going to translate into climate action. This is a very obvious, important point. So where is the starting point and what are the benefits? Who is going to benefit? Let us enhance our international relations towards sustainable development, promoting social cohesion through this. I was just explaining to my brother here, a fellow native Zimbabwean, obviously, but we all belong. The concept of totem praise, how that actually promotes social cohesion within that part of the global community in Zimbabwe. And I'm sure in West Africa they have the same, which is probably different from that of Zimbabwe. In the UK, the totem lion, it's a national totem. The lion in Zimbabwe, it's a national totem. Wherever you go, social cohesion is grounded to that very local level. So preserving such kind of aspects of culture is a must for everybody. And without wasting too much time, let me go and say, it's not all lost. It's not all doom and gloom. There is hope. The CCDS is our very first port of call to actually champion this cause. They are not going to be our speakers. We are going to be the speakers. We are going to be the advocates. They are just a platform. And here we are. That's why I am actually thankful to having found the CCDS as the right platform to advocate for that aspect of cultural diplomacy in itself. I am actually calling upon the importance and the need for us to elevate the UK Africa's intangible cultural heritage to global prominence. I propose a multi-pronged approach that addresses the imbalance which I've already mentioned earlier. It is a very important point that we need to translate into policy, and here are the proposed avenues for success. Why they are important avenues? It's because when we reflect and learn from the past and evaluate and learn from the past initiatives, if I would go exactly with the UK and Africa, cultural engagements, cultural diplomatic engagements worked very well, but to the advantage of one member of the Commonwealth. So here is the time we are saying, let's reconstruct and let's reformulate and let's rebuild that bridge. And let's build back better, a stronger bridge that will sustain the global future, that will be enduring and forever. Let's release the past. Let's bring in new hope. So why I say that? Because this UK-Africa cultural diplomatic engagement is a boon for success. It will unlock the full micro and macroeconomic potential for our relevant assets that we've got. So firstly, let's leverage cultural diplomacy to build bridges to understand between nations. Through robust cultural exchange programs, which obviously have not worked very well to the benefits of all the global community. But I think now is the time we can reevaluate again and bring in new hybrid initiatives. These initiatives should be designed with sensitivity to local contexts, respecting the sovereignty and urgency of the communities involved. Secondly, digital preservation offers humanity a powerful tool. I attended the Berlin conference over the digital platform, and I felt as if I was there and we were talking about culture, and I expressed my cultural values within that platform. So there we go. The world has got a lot to offer to us. By developing digital archives, virtual museums, and online platforms, we can document and share our intangible heritage to the world. This is not only about preserving our traditions for future generations, but also makes them accessible to a global audience. It is actually a very important aspect that not only does the preservation, but it creates accessibility and it ensures continuity. Thirdly, let us integrate cultural heritage into sustainable development initiatives. Sustainable development, recognizing its potential to contribute to poverty reduction, environmental conservation, and social well-being. There is a lot of untapped potential out in this business. Well, I know I may sound unethical when I'm talking of selling culture, but my learned professor would agree and say, look, think about the international business of cultural diplomacy itself. The UK and Africa stands, or they are sitting on 3,000 billion worth of business in this industry. And this is there to benefit everybody. Enough to have food on the plate. So we must confront the harsh reality and look at this instead in a transformed way of thinking. So before I go to the conclusion, imagine a future where Africa's intangible cultural heritage is celebrated and revered across the globe, a future where our traditional knowledge informs our climate action strategies, helping communities adapt to ecological challenges with wisdom passed down through generations. Let's picture a world where cultural diversity is not just a protected, but a new norm. Obviously, a new norm where it is seen as a critical resource for innovation and progress. A norm where folklore, rituals, rain-making festivals, moon celebration festivals, totem praises, celebration, the king's granary, which we call in Zulu, Isipala, in Zulu Ndebele, we call it Isipala Senkos. What does that mean in Shona is Zunde Ramambo, and in English, it's a welfare system, and I think my brothers in the Muslim world, they have that kind of a safety net, whereby if you fall to the lowest, you always rely on the communal elders. They will always be there to provide and cushion you. If we would integrate this cultural aspect into a new norm, which child will go hungry? Which elderly person will go to sleep without any food? These were well represented, well understood as a points of respect and recognition in the future world. We stand to protect the world community. These traditions are not just relics of the past, they are breathing expressions of our community identity, wisdom, and resilience, a part of disaster risk management system. They offer insights into the African creative smart power, a social assurance mechanism that safeguards the mental health and well-being of each and every one of us against worry, fear of lack, hopelessness of where am I going to get a meal tonight. And all these three things I've mentioned, Professor, you'll agree with me, they are clear congenital symptoms of anxiety and depression, which was actually even worse precipitated and marinated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now we are actually standing at an enormous, humongous global burden of anxiety and depression, let alone post-traumatic stress disorder. The list goes on. Let me not go into my clinical jacket. In this future, our cultural traditions are preserved not only in museums, but in the daily lives of people worldwide, enriching their understanding of what it means to be human. Our stories, our songs, rituals shared across the digital platforms provides access to all and serving as a source of inspiration and pride. So the action step in itself, to achieve this, we need your commitment. I call upon all the stakeholders, the policymakers, the NGOs here present, cultural institutions, starting with CCDS first, and governments to prioritize the preservation of Africa's intangible cultural heritage. But I'm sure the UK also has got quite a lot to offer in that puzzle. Let us work together to facilitate a global cultural cooperation. Let's learn from past initiatives. Let's promote integrated approaches that connect heritage with sustainable development and climate action. Let's engage in our diversity, respect the intellectual property rights of communities as represented by our engagement with the kings, who are the chief custodians. They are the chief custodians of local knowledge. And that is a key important aspect of the United Nations knowledge management system. Let's ensure that our digital initiatives are inclusive and accessible. And this is just simply not preserving the past, but it is basically a turning point in history whereby inspiration, education is unity for us all. In my concluding remarks, ladies and gentlemen, this thoughtful presentation cannot emphasize enough the centrality of mental health as the highest common denominator of human dignity. We wouldn't be all here if we had gone astray or lost our kind of capacities to navigate the direction to be here without understanding. So it stands to benefit through cultural diplomacy. This presentation underscores the interconnectedness of traditional cultural continuity cooperation as the critical cornerstone to conflict resolution, climate action, and sustainability. These are the issues that resonate very well globally. I may not emphasize that enough. Maybe I'm just a small voice for now, but I've got the bigger voices in you. Let this forum be the starting point for a global movement, one that recognizes the value of the UK Africa's intangible cultural heritage, and let's take decisive action to preserve it for generations to come. By doing so, we will not only preserve UK Africa's intangible cultural heritage only, but also enrich the world. Let's reach to the world, fostering a more connected, compassionate, and culturally diverse global future. Together, we can turn the tide. We can ensure that the rich cultural tapestry that remains now in Africa and in the UK also remains vibrant toward our shared global future endurance. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the words of a song come to mind. Don't worry about a thing, because every little thing's gonna be all right. So please, questions to Tangai. Please, he's a very experienced man. He has spoken about the bridge between UK and Africa and to bring Africa to the fore in terms of its culture, in terms of liaising with kings, who are the custodians of cultural diplomacy and our history. So first question, please, to Tangai. Sir.
Yes, hello, yeah. Well, thank you very much. What you say and what you've been explaining is very much the goal and purpose of IDO, which whose speech was, His Excellency Paul Uganda, whose speech was read earlier on. And that is exactly what IDO are trying to do, but also not just from the UK, but in other parts of the world, connecting the diaspora with Africa. And I'm an advisory board member of IDO myself, as is Sheikh Ramzi. What I see as the real problem is funding. So what we need is some way to generate funding for these projects. it can include business, and it does within IDO itself, but there isn't enough to get it really kicked off and started. So, so that we can get projects going on projects of enough magnitude going on to really make a difference. So I know I'm not really asking you how do they get funded. I'm really trying to raise a point here and say, in terms of finding solutions to the problems that we've outlined here, I think an interesting focus would be how to develop funding, how to develop grant funding, how to, you know.
That's called a big question.
Well, yeah, it's a big question, but you know, it's a big question that needs to be answered because otherwise everything won't be all right. So, I mean, I know you're not going to give me an answer, but you might be able to give some input on it.
Thank you. Yes, and I actually take that comment, or shall I respond yet? Or yes. I actually take that as a word of assurance that everything is going to be all right. Because what we are saying is, it resonates very well with the current challenges and gaps. Because that cultural aspect is underfunded. That's a big problem. And hence, it is also underrepresented. We can't promote it when it is underfunded, when it is underrepresented and not even recognized. So first of all, it's about awareness. Let's have the awareness campaign first, and let's just put it out there. And I'm so proud to know that actually IDO International is behind me in this advocacy work. And therefore, everything is going to be all right. Money is not the issue here, because money is always there. Let's go on a campaign against the soft power of nuclear weapons. Yeah? And bring the hard power of cultural diplomacy, which enhances the mental health and well-being, to dispel and remove the anger. It is the anger that is gripping the world, whereby people become tight when it comes to money issues. So we are looking at empowering the hard power of cultural diplomacy and change and twitch a bit in terms of optimizing the balance of power. So it is about rebalancing our finances and putting the priorities that actually promote global peace between ourselves as individuals. I see beyond the, well, I wouldn't even use the color, but maybe I'll say the complexion. He is my brother, you are my brother, she is my sister, and everything. So we are one. We are a people together. So can we not actually contribute a pound towards bringing the hard power of cultural diplomacy as opposed to the soft power of, obviously, military might itself? And I think that has worked very well within the UK and Africa engagement in the past. Even now, it is still continuing to work. So let's reprioritize our focus on human dignity first. Thank you.
Thank you. Question, June, would you mind standing,
Hi,
please?
thank you.
Thank you.
My question was going to be about money, but you say money is not the issue.
We're dealing with kings, June.
Yeah, I know, but you know, hey, kings and money can be two different questions. So if somebody came to you and said, here you are, here's an open check, and you've pointed out the first thing that you would do is raise an awareness campaign. Africa is quite big. So where would you concentrate on with the awareness campaign, considering people know Africa? So if you say raising awareness of Africa, I wouldn't even go there with that, because they'll give it back to you. So you have to break it down. What is your priority? You said awareness, but of what?
Okay.
Where, when, how, and who?
Thank you so much. That's a very, very interesting question. If I may impress you that In a month or two, I'm actually championing a sustainable development conference somewhere in Spain, where we are actually bringing this to the UN for the Parliament of the world. First, maybe we can get the sovereign push and power to go down to individual to get that kind of assent or approval to approach each and every government at an individual state level. But obviously, there are multiple other platforms and avenues we can actually explore now that this is a question you are raising, to start looking at the actual logistics on where can we start. Because obviously, man is not an issue, but it needs accountability. And it needs actually to be focused on an area that brings back return. And I think as long as it is available, definitely it will have that kind of mechanisms that will work out the project itself to make sure that it reverberates to the real intended beneficiaries.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Thank
sorry.
you.
We have,
Okay.
yeah, there was one more question. Yeah.
Okay.
And sorry, and you. I will take you next.
Thank you, Tangai, for your lecture. It was
Yes.
very interesting.
Yes.
So my question is, what cultural aspects UK, Africa, and the world benefited in the past, and what are the missed opportunities? And what other specific factors, apart from those you already mentioned, have contributed to past failures in cultural diplomacy? And thank you.
Thank you so much, Jihan. You know what, I would write a thesis to answer you on that one. But you know, in the interest of time, we only have got just today. One-to-one engagement will be great. But just in short and in simple, when I was growing up back in Zimbabwe, we would hear the illustrious story of Oxford University, Cambridge, yeah? Household names, St. Andrew's College in Edinburgh. So our brothers who were actually benefited from the, I think at the time, obviously, when I was growing up, Zimbabwe was actually at the war of liberation and decolonization process. But the UK still extended that gesture and said, look, we are probably fighters today, but tomorrow we are going to be friends and let's build the future. Let's bring in short, it was just academic exchanges. How it did not work or benefited, unfortunately, Zimbabwe post-independence would not absorb or would not have or would not afford to pay a Cambridge graduate at the salary equivalence of their job here in the UK. So those exchanges actually became natives who integrated in the UK and never returned back without actual let or hindrance by the UK government intentionally, but indirectly through the disparities within social equity between the two states. I don't know if that makes sense. Yes. So, right. Obviously, yes. The opportunities were there. I mean, they were obviously on merit. Yeah, it was based on merit. But what I'm actually saying is past exchange program returned, it actually retained and it kept the people that had actually been seconded by the UK government to come and start here. And they never returned back. And that seems the trend. I'm one of them here. I'm actually training. I trained as a nurse with the hope of going back to Zimbabwe. But then when I think of actually going back to Zimbabwe and working my role as a forensic psychiatric nurse, I've even made that effort. I couldn't be rewarded at the same rate. No blame, no fault of the UK government. But I think it's just the imbalance of the relationship. Because when I look from an economic perspective, I will not be able to feed my family enough with the job offer probably I may get because of the economic fundamentals that shape the Zimbabwean economy and the fundamentals that shapes the UK economy. So as members of the Commonwealth, I think that is part of cultural diplomacy that did not work to benefit both.
Okay, thank you.
Seems to me.
Is there
One
any other
more
question I
question?
didn't answer maybe?
Thank you very much. Actually, my question is on the area, one of the areas of your expertise, which is the mental health area.
Yes.
And I think often we talk a lot about the wealth in Africa, the resources and all of that. But and I think the biggest wealth of Africa is the population and the people, right? So my question is more in the area of, for my country, for example, Nigeria, and I think a lot of the population are in the survival mode.
Yes.
You know, and so therefore a mind that is on the survival cannot maximize the potential it has. So how do you think, and which is probably the same in places like Kenya, for example, in Congo, with just young population on a survival mode or trying to make an end means to just live by the day. And so without that, if they have not been able to go beyond that, so it means our mind will not fully maximize its potential. And by 2030, it estimated that African youth will constitute 42% of the global youth, which is just less than 5.5 years from now. So what do you think can be a solution in terms of mental health, where a lot of African in general see therapies, for example, as a big problem, as if something, I don't know if you get my question, but just something that I would like to hear a bit of your thought, considering that you're an African, and this is an area of your expertise as well, and as we look into the future for the continent.
Thank you so much. Is that Ezekiel, right? Yeah. Thank you so much. And I think you are actually talking of the youth in Africa when you're actually one of the youths here. And Mother here has actually promised me an open check to start the work. So that's where we are starting from. Only a joke. Yes, but look, collaboration is the way forward here. That's what we are thinking about in terms of mental health. That is where I found myself actually well placed in a steady position to start actually advocating for the real facets that needs to be brought into. That's why we are talking about sustainability. The youth poverty, security, mental health in itself is the cornerstone of the youth of the future, or the future of today that we have right now, the reality that we are. So working on mental health as a sustainable development goal, if you look at it right now, it's not even integrated or mentioned within SDG 3 of the United Nations agenda. It is just mentioned health and well-being, but there is no precise or specific meaning, which is part of the campaign that I'm actually presenting in September in Spain. But also, given the opportunity, we will be actually championing the UN in itself to rewrite the international legal framework around the SDG 3 and other associated linkages, yeah? To make sure that mental health in itself is itself the actual hard power. So the youth are the beneficiaries. Cultural diplomacy in itself is going to benefit mental health of the world if we would actually take this kind of trajectory in the serious kind of urgent need that needs to be addressed. So when we are talking of other ways of working with, I mean, obviously, collaboration, we are actually going to go on that kind of a campaign as we are already doing right now to make sure that we get the support that is available. We have got, obviously, NGOs that are talking about recovery, yeah? We are talking about recovery. How do we recover? First of all, it's a process. I wouldn't go into the technical details. That one is for you and me, my brother. Free counseling session for you when we're talking of recovery. Yes, but it is there. And it is the target that we are looking at. Here, I'll conclude and say the whole point I am actually advocating for is our hard power, which is the mind.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now,
I think Sheikh Ramzi would like to raise a
Yes.
question.
yes. Good afternoon, my friend, my honorable friend. I'm putting a hat, of course, I've got several hats to wear. I'm putting a hat of representing the 4 million Muslim, 4.5 million Muslim in the United Kingdom. You said some things about the exchange of culture between the Britain, UK, and Africa. Are you dreaming? Are you dreaming?
Maybe.
Now, I tell you what, as I said, they represent 4 million.
Yes.
They want, the UK want Britishness. UK want a British culture, nothing else. Nothing else. Is there any English people except Martin is here? Martin? Yes, excellent. This is the way which they want. Many times talk to the government, I myself. About they say Britishness, okay,
Yes.
has to come and is the 5 things which you have.
Yes.
Therefore, there is no exchange. You accept from the Britain what they give you. Otherwise, they don't. This is what we have to do. Perhaps the cultural diplomacy come forward and say, hey, take it easy. Let's give and take. But if you, excuse me, if you don't think Britain give away a millimeter for the Africa, think again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think, I mean, that's my personal take here. I have benefited myself, actually, from the UK Africa Cooperation. And I don't know how many more kind of people who have come in, depending on what niche or what line that one is. But yes, but otherwise, that's the whole point of diplomacy. You can't impose your will on the other. Once you do that, you are creating a never-ending conflict. You can't convince by force. You can convince by hard power of the mind, which is respect, recognition, and as far as the processes are concerned, the UK and Africans, if I would speak about it, they recognize that self-pride the UK holds as a nation. And this is why probably if a few cases, or maybe just many cases, if I would put it that way, most Africans, they come to the UK through the normal process of applying for a visa, and that is a recognition of Britishness. They recognize Britishness, and they respect that. So the other way around equally. So let's moderate the relationship and make it a bridgeable kind of problem that we can actually build a future with sustainable endurance. And I thank you very much. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I really do apologize, but time is running short. Sorry, pardon me? Would you mind standing?
Just wait a moment. We'll make an exception in this particular time,
I
but
think
normally...
that if we make an exception, there will have to be two
But then-
exceptions.
But
yes?
then again, we just need to understand that in as much as we are trying to expand the scope, we still are constrained by time, and we also have to try to interbalance it. This is why we have the post-conference engagement, so you can one-on-one, like he says, not for you, but for the gentleman over there, he can have his own therapy.
No problem. Because I'm really interested in this topic, mental health. Wherever I go, I'm just like everyone are saying, like, we have a mental health issue. And I'm exhausted of this words as well, because when people are dealing with small anger or a depression, the other person is telling them, like, you are dealing with, you have a mental health issue. This is really leaving a really negative impact on their life. Instead of telling them, you have some problem, you can deal with it. When you are telling the person you have a mental issue, they start thinking if they have any problem.
So it's self-perpetuating. Sorry, another quick question, very, very quick.
Yeah, I just want to ask, what is the definition of a mental health? Like,
Right.
if you are dealing with a small depression, anxiety, or because you have anger because of your situation, and people are telling you have a mental health issue. And I have just this question: what is the real definition of mental health?
Okay, thank you. Sorry, quick question just here, and then you. Yes? So definition
Okay.
of mental health,
Yeah.
one aspect.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I think I was just trying to build a point from what Sheikh said. Between the British and then African diplomacy, even though, for instance, in Ghana and other African countries, our education systems are based on British English. If you want to apply to any institution in Britain or in UK, then you are told to go and write another English exams, which is IELT and other exams. So is it that the English that we learn or were taught by British in Ghana is different from the English that British speak in their own city?
Very, very different. There's
Oh.
British English, American English, business English, conversational English, etc. So it's quite different. There are many aspects. Yeah? Yeah.
And historically, in 1870, this is when the 26 dialects of English, in what they call recognized pronunciation, was brought into a standard. So most English taught in the colonies is the structured pronunciation, which is not necessarily the dialects which you find over here. Newcastle dialect, Midlands, and this
Exactly.
thing are totally different.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last
Thank you.
question, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think, through the marketplace and through business, with, giving power back to the people, a lot of money can be generated, amongst each other. So I just wanted to ask you, what practical things specifically do you have in mind as a way that we could get involved in making, practical positive changes? Like, did you have any specific practical things that we could get involved in?
Thank you very much.
Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right. So starting on the definition of mental health, let me just make it simple for you, my sister. Yeah. Mental health is physical health. It's your well-being. It's your being. Where you are right now, where he is right now, he's in a good state of mind, which we call mental health. Right? That's different from mental illness or mental disorder. We are now different. We are now talking of different things. Yeah? So if I would give you a detailed definition, I will actually try and refer you to the late UN Secretary General. I think it was first touched on by Secretary General Boutros Ghali. And then the next one was also Kofi Annan. Yes, he gave a clear, concise definition that shaped the modern times definition of mental health, which is focused on human dignity. So your practical experiences that you've come across, my sister, is misunderstanding. And mental health in itself is misunderstood. That's why it is not even incorporated in the SDG 3. On the, SDG 3 is Sustainable Development Goal 3, focuses on health and well-being. But it doesn't specifically talk or define a state of the mind that is dignified. It doesn't even touch on it at all. That's why we are championing to create that common understanding, to overcome the barriers, the stigma, the prejudice, the discrimination that you come across. Maybe in your own individual case, but it's not only you alone. It is a daily thing that I face in my daily work and practice. When I'm actually explaining to somebody, or when I'm dealing with somebody who is in crisis, immediately it is about actually deconstructing the real issue we are dealing with. Somebody is just struggling with housing. So why is it a mental health issue? Why is it escalated as a mental health crisis? It is a housing issue. It is a social issue. It is not a clinical per se. That's where we get the difference. And I'm sorry that you have gone through this kind of stereotypes. So that's why I actually took it to CCDS and say, look, I need a platform actually to say something here. Give me the platform actually to advocate for mental health specifically. Right. What we are actually looking at is the health and well-being of everybody so that you are functioning socially, spiritually, economically, and physically together, where none of the 5 dimensions are actually separated from the other. But they are just the whole person, the holistic person, and being able to understand exactly. Don't worry, it's not your single-handed problem. It reverberates around culture and intracultural sort of misunderstanding. Thank you. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Thank you.
There was another aspect the lady did ask, what can people do?
Yes.
One do.
Yes, please. So in this sort of goal, I would say my immediate next steps, as I was mentioning about past initiatives or engagements, right, which was cultural exchange. I think for now the most immediate one is revisiting the cultural exchange aspect of it. Again, to see what worked and what did not work. We would like to engage, well, particularly I would want to target the youth and have that kind of dialogue and forum. And I think one of my sisters here has just expressed that and made it elaborate. That there is confusion, there is misunderstanding, there is no knowledge of what exactly we say and what we don't. And look here at the explosion of the media. Some of it is actually causing a lot of horrendous things. Yeah, human trafficking. Yeah, children, being targeted and being victimized. Cyber security, cyber crime issues. That's why I'm actually interested in cyber security. Social media in itself, how is it actually enhancing the mental well-being of the generations we have today? So it begins with cultural exchange, dialogue, engagement, education, and all that. Those are the most kind of, I would say, that will come off mind. I don't know if I've answered your questions. I'm here at your disposal.
And if you can, in one paragraph, just add an insight into his thing about the dynamics of English, the difference between those from the African experience and when they come into the UK, his question. Even though we shared some comments on it, Norma and I, he just wants that again.
Yes, so in terms of English language, probably if this is something that I've just learned even when I came here 24 years ago, that I was actually not speaking English. I was writing English, yeah? And I had to adjust. When I started off down in Slough, there is a particular kind of English language that in Slough they speak, which is a dialect, but not written English. But when I went actually to university to write an essay to submit and apply for the job, for the training position, I was told that you are excellent. So there are several types of English dialects, and I think Doctor has elaborated, and I can't elaborate it any better than the way he put it. Dialect and you said recognized pronunciations, they are different. Yeah. If you would go and actually up north in Scotland, you would even think that actually they're not speaking English.
Another language.
It's another language, but they speak English as well. Yeah. So I would also give you an example. We have got English Zimbabwe. And actually it's there on Google. If you type and you put in Zimbabwe English, Google will ask you, do you want Zimbabwean English, or you want US English, or you want UK English? And I've looked at that. But then one important aspect that we need to recognize, and I think what I've just also learned from Doctor, is the recognized pronunciation, because English is it will forever, well, not forever, but for a long time, be a permanent feature of cultural diplomacy. At the UN General Assembly, here right now at CCDS, the list goes on. So it is a feature that we just need to be dynamic about where exactly we are and what kind of language are we actually using And obviously French is a different, Russian is always a different, Mandarin Chinese is even different. So, but here in the English context, we speak recognized pronunciation.
So if I say to you, time now, man, please come,
Yes.
you'd understand.
I would understand. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
that's English. So can we wish him